interrupted a burglary in her own home, lived in St. Louis. And in 2 seconds, she was dead. 2 17-year-olds in possession of a stolen handgun, burglarized, broke into her house. She interrupted the burglary, and that was that. I had to do something. And one of the first people that I went to speak to, may she rest in peace, the former supervisor of Nassau County, May Newberger. I said to her, I want to write this book. Go to it, girl. Do it. Get it done. And I will give you any kind of information you need. So I wrote my book, and it took, well, almost 4 years. I kept trying to get as many endorsements, and I have, some great endorsements. And that was my way of doing it. I wanted to use it as a vehicle to get out there and speak to as many people, organizations, churches, schools, whoever will listen to me, to spread the word about gun violence. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Lois, and thank you for your wonderful book. I know there's some copies here. Lois has brought them with her if you're interested in them. Sue, if you would be kind enough, Sue has been on the forefront of New Yorkers Against Gun Violence, a local activist group right here in New York, and would love you to share some of your insights.
Thank you so much, Anna. And thanks to all of you on the panel, especially for those of you with such heartbreaking stories, for being such heroes to the movement. So thank you so much. We've learned a lot of things about gun violence today, and it would be great if you leave with 2 facts. One is the horrific number of people affected in this state each year, which is the 30,000 who are killed, and that obviously doesn't include the 130,000 who are wounded, many with lifelong injuries. And the fact that if you have a gun in your home, someone in your household is more likely to die from a gun. It's very simple. If you have a gun in the home, somebody in your household is more likely to die from a gun. Even in our very protected, idyllic spot of Suffolk County, in the last 5 years, more than 100 people, or around 100 people have been murdered, and even more strikingly, between 140 and 160 have committed suicide with a gun. Now the good news is also the frustrating news, because as Anna said, we know what can cut down the death rate. We know strong laws can make a difference. States that have strong laws have many fewer gun deaths. This month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and if there is a gun involved in a domestic violence situation, a woman is 12 times more likely to die. So we know taking guns away from violent domestic abusers, from felons, from stalkers, and obviously from terrorists can make a huge difference in cutting down the rate of deaths and injuries. We know that to cut down on suicides and accidents, gun owners have to keep their guns locked and unloaded. We know if we want to end mass shootings, we need to end the sale of assault-style weapons. What is most frustrating of all is that 80% of Americans know all this. They know it and they support these measures. So this is why it's so important for us to have people in Washington who will listen to us and actually vote and push through some of these very sensible gun laws. Frankly, the gun lobby is profiting by pitting us against each other. It's a marketing ploy by gun makers and by politicians who benefit in keeping Americans afraid and divided, because we know that not only do 80% of all Americans support these common sense laws, but the majority of gun owners do, the majority even of NRA members do. This is not a radical idea. This is not even a partisan idea. It is a public health idea, which is why we're here today, because this is a critical election. We have two worldviews in this race that Anna is in. One is we can all come together to work together. We can pass smart laws, and we can address these challenges. It's the American way. We see a problem, we get to work, and we address it. That's Anna's way and Hillary's way. The other side is a very dark worldview that we live in a failed country with violence and mayhem everywhere and total distrust of each other, and the only solution is for every household and every individual to be armed. Frankly, that is not the kind of America I want to live in. And if it's not the kind of America, if it's not the kind of America you want to live in, I think we have a great chance to change that and have a positive outcome. So thank you so much, Anna, for your leadership on this issue.
Thank you, Sue, and thank you for all your groundwork on this, because this is how we do make change. And I think you're hearing from all of us a common theme here, which is we shouldn't have to come together in these forums. We shouldn't have to sort of beg for the attention on this, because the attention is already there. You've heard several times today that every single poll that has been done on this issue over the last several years shows that 80 to 90% of Americans want to see these common sense gun safety laws. If 80 to 90% of Americans want this, then it transcends the partisan politics that are dividing our country today. It's that simple. And this is a prime example of where partisan politics have to be put aside for common sense, good legislation that government is there to put in place. That is the number one responsibility of government, is to keep us safe and keep us healthy. That's why we require seat belts. And for some of us who remember when the seatbelt law came along, it was with some level of resistance, but the fact is the seatbelt law has saved millions of lives. That's why we require vaccinations. So many of the very simple safety laws that are in place, that is government fulfilling its very basic duty, is what we're talking about here. We're not talking about taking away rights. We're talking about saving lives, is what we're talking about. And we're talking about a body of government in the House and the Senate today that is letting partisanship and personal gain get in the way of representing us and getting the job done. So these stories that we're hearing today of preventable deaths, preventable tragedies, preventable just heartbreak, and so many of us who have had so far the good fortune of not personally being touched by it, but that send our kids to school every day and worry that they won't come back. that are out on a day-to-day basis wondering why government is not paying heed to this cry are coming together in forums like this to try to bring forward just how important this issue is. So thank you, everyone. I think we wanted to open it up to some questions. Thank you all for being here. I know that we passed around index cards for people to fill in. Mary Beth, did you get some questions? Thank you. Appreciate that. Bill Cockle, you had a question?
No, I'm coming to you with the mic.
Yes. If you wouldn't mind taking the microphone?
No, I don't need it. Can I make a comment?
Yes, of course.
Okay. I don't want to, just a little background. I'm a disabled American veteran, 3 years in the United States Army. "16 months on a DMZ in Korea, and my disability is a direct result of guns. Guns, lots of guns. And I came over time in my life to 52 years now I've had a disability. And to realize that the violence in this country, since I was born, the population of this country has doubled. Okay? The last time I checked, the Constitution was written in what, 17 something? Okay? The population of this country has doubled. Things change. And it's time for a change. And that's what I believe. These ladies up here, for 10 years, 15 years, I volunteered up in a gym in Shirley. I used to pick up kids in North Belport and bring them to the gym. One of those kids was shot right here on Station Road and Montauk Highway. He lived, his athletic career was over, and he came that close to dying. A friend of mine lives in North Belport, and he tells me at night, he says, "You would not believe the gunfire." This is right here. I could almost hit it with a rock. North Belport. Okay? How do you think those people feel? They live there. Mr. Malone, you represent North Belport. Am I right or wrong? Of course. Right. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sending our answers.
Yes, I have to say that I think it's so important to hear from members of the armed services, whether current or veterans and past members, because I think that there is a sense of disconnect there too. I mean, overwhelmingly we hear from law enforcement, overwhelmingly we hear from members of the armed services who absolutely believe in the need for these common sense gun safety laws and see firsthand the carnage, first of all, and also know firsthand. I mean, you, Marie, talk about, your training as a sharpshooter, so knows firsthand the kind of damage that this weaponry can and does inflict. And law enforcement, along with members of the armed services, are some of the biggest advocates for the need for this kind of gun safety legislation to be put in place. So thank you, Bill, for that. Very important input. Nadine.
Nadine, please stand up.
Hello. My 26-year-old son was shot to death in front of his house September 10, 2010 by one of his best friends due to a series of malfunctions. The malfunctions is that it's the ease of getting guns. The person that shot him had mental illness. that wasn't addressed. He was shot 6 times. And I'd just like to know, how can we change the state's laws so that all of the states do complete background check? It's just so easy to go out of state, get a gun, come back, sell it. They do it all the time. Everybody knows somebody that can get you a gun. And it's just heartbreaking. We as parents, we're not supposed to bury our children. I have 2 little boys growing up without their father. I fear for their safety. This is just not the life that I envision my children or my grandchildren living. And it's something that lives on and on and on.
You raised the question that, I think we all feel such urgency around, and that is our federal government. Because again, if states or individual, levels of municipality are passing these laws, if it isn't a countrywide thing, then, borders are porous between states and municipalities, and that's exactly why this needs to be a federal issue. There are more guns in the United States of America today than there are people in the United States of America today. That's a lot. And most of them are unaccounted for in terms of being properly registered. And the ability to buy a gun on the internet or go to a gun show and not having to submit to a background check to make sure that there is no history